Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very, very special edition to the podcast brought to you by LFC Transfer Room. I will be your host, co-host today, Richie, joined by YouTube sensation 𝙊𝙘𝙃𝙪𝙘𝙃. How are you doing, man?
Good. Just got back from the match, so I'm in good spirits.
Absolutely. I bet it was emotional and also inspirational to be back at Anfield.
Yeah, it was amazing. I can't wait for 2 more weeks now till the next one, Burnley, but I can't wait.
Absolutely. And also the podcast extraordinaire himself, 𝙊𝙤𝙃 𝙃𝙪𝙾. How are you doing, Daz?
I'm jealous. That's what I am. I'm jealous of Matty.
I
don't like.
I mean, we say
say
this in every pod, don't we? Like, you know, I'm only in Cambridge, so I'm 3.5, 4 hours away. You're in Texas, so that's a hell of a trek.
I live my life through yous lot.
And as we say, like a very, very special podcast, because we're joined with Peter Kenny Jones, who is a football historian and obviously a famous Liverpool author. How are you today, Pete?
I'm not bad. Yourself? You all right?
Yeah. I'm all right. Yeah, I'm all right. Especially it's good to see the lads back at Anfield and to see Anfield so packed out as well. You know, let's just remember that this was a pre-season friendly today, and some of the videos that I saw on Twitter was absolutely incredible. You know, the sound of "You'll Never Walk Alone" came across on the phone amazingly. So, Matty, I don't know what it was like for you there, but that must have put goosebumps back on you.
Yeah, it was probably one of the best "You'll Never Walk Alones I've heard at Anfield, and it wasn't even full capacity. It was amazing. You could see all the fans had been waiting so long to belt that tune out. It gave me goosebumps. It was amazing, to be honest.
I know, like, so we said very special, and obviously, like, we've got Peter Kenny Jones joining us today, but also special because this is our first ever live podcast. So those of you who are viewing this, obviously, please get involved into the comments. We have a few questions for Pete, but obviously feel free to get involved. We do this on the spaces as well, so it'd be great for you to get involved. Red Knights man actually has said it was a 75% capacity today, and I think you could double the size of Anfield, if I'm honest, right now, and we'd still sell out. I don't think there's any bones about it. You know, the power of Anfield is going to add another 12 points at least to our season, I think, compared to last season. So, you know, we'll see. But I mean, we sort of, like, when we have guests on, we completely eliminate our normal schedule where we do look at transfers as as our name suggests, and really we just want to get to know our guests, and we want to know, like, Pete's connection to Liverpool. We want to know, like, his opinion on everything. So we'll get straight down to it, Pete, really. And I tweeted out earlier, and the Liverpool fan base have responded really well. Could you, like, firstly, I suppose, Pete, if you want to tell us, like, about yourself and introduce yourself, and then we'll get straight into the questions, because there's been some really good feedback actually for all of the followers. Thank you so much on LFC Transfer Room. So if you could just tell us about yourself, and we'll crack on with a few questions.
Yeah. So obviously, Peter Kenny Jones, or you can call me Pete, that's fine. Football historian and writer, from Liverpool, 26 years old. First and foremost, I'm a Liverpool fan. Obviously, I'm trying to make my name as a football historian, and that's what I want to do. But yeah, this is obviously my first book, which I think why you got me on today, which is about Billy Liddell. It's got to be his 100th birthday in January. So I've been lucky enough to speak with his family and ex-teammates and stuff. And so it's called Billy Liddell at 100, a family portrait of a Liverpool icon. And yeah, I think that's why I'm here today, just to talk about that, really. And obviously, any questions about Liverpool, today or this season, or whenever you want to say, 50s, 60s today, whenever I can help with. But yeah, thanks for having me on.
It's a pleasure. You came highly recommended from Daz, and I know you was on Daz's podcast as well. So yeah, Daz is obviously Daz obviously knows you quite well, and you come highly recommended.
Yeah, thanks, Daz. Listen to it back today.
I think
You can pay me later.
Nice one.
I think really to start the ball rolling, obviously like a Liverpool historian, I mean, that's something that most of us would dream of. I mean, we're probably like, you know, Liverpool fans are one of the most passionate fans in the world, really, you know, and to actually research Liverpool Football Club, that must be, as a fan as well, quite emotional, quite inspirational. Like, I mean, how did you even get into it? How did you go about that? And, you know, surely the whole thing must have just been, whilst it's work, classed as work, it must have just been so enjoyable.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, you know, it's unfortunately it's not something I do full time, that's my real passion, is for it to be, you know, the main thing I do full time in my life. But this is my first book, but I finished uni in 2017, and I did a dissertation on 𝙊𝙤𝙃 𝙃𝙪𝙣𝙃 𝙃𝙪 and looking at Liverpool and Everton in the 60s. And basically, when I finished that, I realised I had this like big body of work that my dad and people my dad's age would be interested in. So I just kind of split it up and sent it out to some Liverpool fanzines and websites, and same for Everton. And they just said they enjoyed it. Do you want to write some more? So I just said, okay, yeah, definitely. And just kind of built upon from there, really. So, and then I didn't want to just box myself in as, just Liverpool. I wanted to be a football historian. So I tried to write for as many different people as possible. But obviously, Liverpool's where my heart is, and that's what I always want to do the most. So because of this book, and because I've had a good few years writing, my auntie's mates with Billy Liddell's sister, Rena Liddell. So I just basically got chatting with her, and we pitched an idea to a publisher, Pitch, who took it up, thankfully. And then, yeah, just from chatting with her, it's just grown really. So obviously, it's a full book now. I submitted a couple of weeks ago and coming out in November. And yeah, I'm just really, I know Daz said to me before, I'm just really looking forward to seeing the book and holding it. It's going to be a bit of a weird one, and then hopefully just chat about it and hopefully get his story out there. That's what I'm here for, really.
It must be amazing though to be writing about arguably the best Liverpool player of all time.
Yeah. It's I feel like I'm getting to know someone that obviously I've never met, so it's a bit of a weird one. And there's little boundaries and stuff. So obviously you go into it. Billy Liddell, I know he played for Liverpool. I knew it was Liverpool. I knew he was pretty good at football, and that's about it really. And then obviously I've just tried to build on from there. So you see the pictures, then you see the videos, then you read about the stuff he did, and then you listen to his voice and all that. It's just like getting to know someone almost as a person rather than as a footballer, many years after he's died. But it's been really interesting, and yeah, quite exciting just to see how good he was and how loyal he was to Liverpool and why the fans loved him so much.
Obviously we said earlier, we tweeted out if you had any obviously questions for yourself and to send them in. And one of a really good question, I mean, I think I'll save the best question till last, and I think you've obviously seen it already, Pete, but I think one of a really good question was from someone, Tommy Jones. So thank you, Tommy, as well. If you're listening, then a big hello. It's a really good question. Having wrote the book, Peter, can you state categorically, again, I don't know how much you want to categorize it, but who is the greatest Liverpool player of all time? Billy Liddell, Kenny Dalglish, or Steven Gerrard? I mean, it's a really difficult question. I think I'm going to ask Matty and Daz on that as well, and I'll come in as well. But what's your opinion?
Well, I don't think I'm allowed to give the deciding vote, but obviously I've seen Gerrard play, and obviously he's my hero of everyone I've seen. I think longevity wise and everything in my lifetime, he's been the one. But also getting the opportunity to read and learn and research about Billy Liddell, it does show how good he was. He was getting picked for the Great Britain team while he was in the second division with Liverpool. He had no right to be in the Scotland team, never mind the Great Britain team. But, that was just how good he was. But he was so loyal, he stayed with Liverpool. So I think the only way to do it, really, I think, is to speak to people who have seen all three. And I haven't seen all three, but I spoke to quite a few when literally every single person who I have has said Billy Liddell's on top. So I'll go on the side of the book and the side of the people, everyone who spoke. I'll say Billy Liddell on this one. No bias.
I'd have to say, I mean, I've never seen Billy Liddell play, only videos and stuff. So I'm the same as you. It's got to be Steven Gerrard. He's my hero from the same area as Gerrard. I grew up in the same area as Gerrard, little old Heighton, and he's just the best ever. The best there was, the best there is, the best there'll ever be for me. But I do feel robbed that I was never allowed to see Billy Liddell play. I feel like I've been robbed being born later on in life.
It's Kenny for me, just because I'm a 70s kid, you know, grew
Yeah.
up. Again, yeah, of course, I wish I would have, you know, been able to see Billy play. But yeah, it's Kenny. I mean, Stevie, he's a close second, like really close. But, you know, I had Kenny's posters on the wall, so I've got to go with Kenny.
I mean, yeah, Steven Gerrard. I mean, to be fair, when I was growing up, I was born in 1987, and my first ever favourite player was Steve McManaman. And Steven Gerrard, you know, quickly became my second favourite ever player. But I just think for what he's done for the club as a player, and obviously as a, you know, as a manager, and what he did for Hillsborough, and just what Kenny Dalglish is, you know, Sir Kenny Dalglish is to Liverpool Football Club. Like, probably the best player that I've obviously ever seen is Steven Gerrard. But I think if we're trying to, you know, step out of the box, the biggest contributor at the moment to Liverpool Football Club is Kenny Dalglish for me. But who's to say that Steven Gerrard can't go on and, you know, manage the team and take us to heights as well? So, I mean, I was never fortunate enough again to see Billy Liddell play, and I'm looking forward to reading your book, because I personally don't know too much about him more than a casual fan, if I'm honest. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to reading your book and seeing what impact he had, because I know his name is obviously still sung on the cop, and you know, it's just going to be a really interesting read. But they're three. I mean, I thought that was a really, really good question from Tommy. So thank you, Tommy, for that. But yeah, I mean, they're three wonderful, wonderful players. If there would be a fourth, though, who you could put into that category, and again, I don't mind who goes first. Who do you think would be put into that category? Who would be that player who you would probably compare those three to?
Alan Anderson or Van Dijk. One of them two's got to go in it, surely.
No, I'll only go off what I've seen. I think he wasn't there long enough, but I think just in terms of actual talent and ability, Luis Suarez for me, I think, you know, just for what he did that time he was there, you know, he made Gerrard look average in that team. It's just, I think, if Suarez was there for 15, 20 years, like Kenny, Billy and Stevie was, I think he'd definitely be top of the list. It's just because we weren't lucky enough, or he wasn't committed enough to be a long time. But yeah, for me,
Suarez for me as well. He's just a fighter. You know, I think that's what Liverpool miss, really. It's somebody that'll not bite. Somebody who will scrap for every ball, you know, and I think Liverpool do miss that. But that man scored some amazing goals. I mean, Norwich is coming up, you know, and we all know what he did to Norwich quite a few times. So, you know, yeah, Luis Defo.
Do you know what? One of my friends, Hannah, hello, is following us, and she said Ian Rush for me all the way, and that's a really good shout. You know, you can't argue against that, to be fair. But for me, I cannot believe the disrespect you're putting on Mo Salah's name. I cannot believe it. For me,
I actually done
Mo
I done
Salah
a video
all
on
day.
Salah. I done a video on Salah on the channel about why he's the greatest attacker to play for Liverpool in the Premier League era, and I went into the numbers. Statistically, he really is the best attacker we've had in this era.
I agree 100%. You know, like, you can't argue against records broken and golden boots, and you know, Salah's got it all. But I think Ian Rush was a good shout. I think all of them are a good shout. Luis Suarez was something sensational. And again, yeah, I feel bad for. We were saying, like, on the podcast, like, I feel bad for the likes of Suarez, because he didn't really win anything. He won a League Cup, and that was it. And for a man of that talent, he deserved more at his time at Liverpool, I think. Obviously, everyone else as well in the comments, like, please do get involved in this. We've had a couple of comments already. 𝙊𝙃𝙪𝙘𝙪𝙣𝙃 said, I love Billy Liddell, love of our city, and I wish that both teams do well. Wish that existed today. So yeah, thank you for that as well. You know, do get involved and tell us what you think as well. That's what this is all about, this live podcast for the first ever time. Matty, Daz, do you have any questions for Pete at all?
Yes, obviously Billy Liddell played for Liverpool for like 23 years. What would you say after writing the book? Would you say would have been your favourite memory in the book? What's the best story that you think of Billy Liddell?
Yeah, well, I think there's two answers really, if that's all right. I think obviously the first one I think would just be in terms of the club. He only won one trophy, and it was 46-47 league title. And if you look through the honours list, you never get to see what happens in a season. You just see we won the league then. But honestly, that season it's unbelievable. I was writing it and I was getting tense and excited writing it up myself. It's the maddest season ever. Like 6 games to go, Liverpool were 4th or 5th. Had to win all the games. Hope results went their way. Hope Everton did a favour and beat Wolves, top of the league. And then Sheffield United had to beat Stoke by a certain amount of goals on the last game of the season, which was 2 weeks after the end of the season because of the long winter. And Liverpool managed to win it literally out of nowhere. So I think in terms of like a dramatic story, I don't think you could ever top. It makes the Aguero moment look like just a normal game. Honestly, when you read it, that season was mad. But I think for Billy personally, obviously, because he never scored or anything like a real crucial goal in that season, I'd say for him, it's the goal that never was against Man City in the FA Cup. It was going into extra time. Sorry, it was City were winning. It was 2-1, and basically Billy took the ball from the kickoff, beat 2 men, hit it from 40 yards out, and after he's hit the ball, the referees blew his whistle. The ball's flown in the back of the net, and obviously at the time it was, the cops got wild. And all the players have gone off the pitch and they're all still waiting there. And they've had to say on the tannoy, the referee blew his whistle after he kicked it, so the goal didn't count. So like it was just like a massive moment. The fans had just seen this unbelievable goal. It was going to extra time. It was going to be an unbelievable story. And then they find out later, oh no, it's cancelled. And in the Echo the next day, they've got the picture of the referee blowing the whistle after the ball's left his foot. And it's just like, it was a proper loads of drama, loads of... Yeah, just basically a mad story for all the fans that were there then. I think speaking to people who saw him, that's the main memory they have of a moment of him, because it shows what he could do. He literally picked Liverpool up, scruff of the neck, and nearly dragged them through to the next round of the cup. But it was robbed by a referee. So I think that's probably the moment I think that most fans who watched them will remember best.
Peter, I want to ask you, because you spent hours and hours doing research and stuff, and I know you've got more stories on Billy, than the book as well. Probably some naughty ones as well.
Well, not too bad. He was a really nice bloke. There's not much there to dish on him really. He was just a solid bloke who really enjoyed his football and was really committed. I think probably the main stories that you can't have heard or one have said is the fact that he put Liverpool and football so high on his priority list. I think it did damage his family life a little bit, in the sense that I think his children did feel a bit left out, or a bit that they weren't as important as maybe they felt they should have been in his life, because I think he was just so determined to be a footballer that he put a lot of pressure on them, and basically told them they weren't good enough to carry on playing. And I think that obviously upset them, and a little bit of resentment between them. But I think in terms of any nasty stories about Billy, he didn't swear, he didn't drink, he went to church, went to work, played football. So you're not going to get any scandals out of him, I don't think. But yeah, I won't say that too loud in case the book doesn't sell. But yeah, the scandals everywhere.
Just like obviously moving on then to a couple of comments, and obviously we'll always come back to Billy Liddell, because that's obviously who we're talking about today, as well as like transfers as well. Jurgen Klopp has sent Liverpool fans finally into raptures, because he's not denied that any transfers will be happening, and I think that's the news that we've been waiting for. And he said, like something might happen, which if he was, let's read between the lines. If he was going to shut anything down, he would have done. He's done it before, and he's basically said that we are waiting, and it does feel like it's a waiting game. And 𝙊𝙚 𝙃𝙪𝙣𝙚 has said, can someone explain Klopp's view of the transfer activity? He said there could be more, but was also saying we have our midfield replacement in 𝙊𝙑 𝙃𝙪. And I think that's quite right. After I've seen 𝙊𝙑 𝙃𝙪, obviously they're in preseason friendlies, and we say on Spaces and on the podcast all the time that we can't hype up these youngsters too much, because you don't have too much pressure on there. I personally can't see why we probably do need a midfielder and Matty, Daz, and I were speaking earlier. We've got Fabinho, Thiago, Hendo, Milner, Ox, Elliott, Jones. That's 7 midfielders for 3 spots. I personally don't see us needing a midfielder if Elliott is going to be the boy to be in there. And judging on his performances this pre-season, he's been immense. And we saw him at Blackburn, ripped up the Championship last season. If we went all out for an attacker, I'd be absolutely fine with that. But there is something stirring, it looks like, in the waters from Klopp's comments, because he said the same thing last year and in came Thiago and Jota. You know, I don't know what your lads' views on that is. And obviously we're answering these questions on our live podcast. We've had a couple of people asking us, really. I'm not an ITK and I would never claim to be. I'm not in the know, and I don't think most people are on Twitter or Facebook or whatever it is that everyone claims to be. But I do think there is something in the water. And if Harvey Elliott is going to be in that midfield slot, if we go all out for an attacker, I think, you know, bringing in Konate, that's a sound window if we do bring in a quality attacker. I mean, what's your thoughts, Pete? And then obviously we'll go to Matty and Daz as well.
Yeah, well, you said the 7 there, and I'm not sure if you said Shaqiri as well. And I think if we're ever attacking a game, you want Bobby number 10 and have Jota and Mane and Salah as well. So I never understood the stress over getting a midfielder in when Ginny had gone. Because I think Curtis Jones was Lallana's replacement last year, and I don't think he played too many games, I think, really, for him. Obviously, he'll be happy with it, but I think they wanted to ease him in a bit more. But I think now you've got Harvey Elliott and Curtis Jones both basically after the same spot of just any minutes they can get and just try and grow. I think you're right, the midfield's fine. I think we've got too many centre-backs now out of nowhere. I think, obviously, the worry's probably full-backs, but I don't think it's disastrous. Milner can play anywhere, anytime. So I think, as you say, I'd just get another forward in. Doesn't have to be anyone amazing. Doesn't have to be massive. Just someone who can come and score goals. Like Danny Ings, who we need someone like that again. He left because he wasn't playing, and you don't mind people like that because he obviously he wanted to get in the team. It didn't work. He moved on. We just need someone else who's eager to try and displace the front 3. And if they don't get in, they move on. If they do, then it's a good problem for Klopp to have.
Yeah, I think with Elliott, for me, I'm a massive Curtis Jones fan, but I think Elliott's just walked himself into Curtis Jones's position in this pre-season. He's been unbelievable. But I agree with you. I don't see the panic to buy a midfielder. We've got 7 or 8 midfielders fighting for 3 positions, and you've got the likes of Thiago, Henderson, and Fabinho. That's your midfield 3 when fit anyway. So there's the Genie replacements. I believe that Genie only got as many minutes as he did last year because of injuries in the squad. I honestly think that it would have been Fabinho, Henderson, Thiago in midfield if Klopp had his choice of a fully fit 11, 100%.
Yeah, I think something's defo brewing. You can feel it. I mean, you can. Actually, the St. George's, Pete, I thought it was your book launch.
Yeah, no, not me.
Getting the fireworks out. But yeah, we're stacked with midfielders. I just don't understand the stress about our midfield. Like you said, Matty, Genie, wasn't injured. That's why he played so much. But I think an attacker's coming. I do. Do I know who? No chance. Always.
I don't think anyone does. I mean, I think there was a couple of earlier comments in the chat bar saying 𝙊𝙘𝙃 𝙃𝙪𝙣𝙃 5-year deal. And again, if that's something that is happening on Twitter right now, I have no idea because obviously we're doing this. So I've got no idea. I mean, 𝙊𝙃𝙃 𝙃𝙪𝙣 would not be the end of the world. We've discussed him in depth on Spaces, and we've discussed him in depth on the podcast that you can obviously catch every Tuesday on Spotify, Apple. It's all down on the banner. It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for 𝙊𝙃𝙃 𝙃𝙪𝙣 to come. He's a homegrown English talent. I don't think it will be like a signing where we're all ecstatic, but I also don't think it will be underwhelming either, considering he's 24. He had, I think, 8 goals and 5 assists last season for West Ham. And this is West Ham. It's not Liverpool. He's not playing with Salah, with Mane, with Jota, with Bobby. He's going to get more assists than that in a better team. That's just, common sense. I don't think it'd be the end of the world if we could sign 𝙊𝙃𝙃 𝙃𝙪𝙣. Obviously, it depends on what price, because West Ham signed him in January for 20 million. I can't see them selling him for less than 40, if I'm completely honest. But again, we know Michael Edwards, he's on his way to get a statue outside Anfield next to Bill Shankly if he carries on his negotiating skills. So, what are your thoughts on 𝙊𝙘𝙃 or?
I think he's a good player. I don't think he's good enough for Liverpool. I don't think he improves on what we've got at all. And we need to improve. We need goals in our team. Like last season, we didn't score enough goals. Pre-season, they've all looked sharp, but then there's a few chances again today where I felt like the old Mané would have buried it. So I do think we need goals, to be honest with you. And 𝙊𝙃𝙃𝙪, he's a good player, but West Ham is probably about his level, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
But don't you think, under Klopp, he can step up, though? That's the thing, I mean, I'm sure all of us, when Robbo came in, we went, 8 million for who? Yeah. I never knew his name.
It's the same as when Sadio came in, and the Twitter reaction on that was insane. Now looking back,
well, Wijnaldum was the same as well. When he came, he was relegated with Newcastle. And we thought, what have we bought here? And apparently he's the best midfielder in Europe now. And he's gone to Barca, so I wouldn't pick Bowen, but if Klopp picks him, then he's boss. I've always believed in him.
Yeah. Back to Billy Liddell. We got a question here. If you could ask Billy Liddell one question, what would it be?
If he could come back from the death and plug me book, I think that'd be good. One question, I think the main thing I'd ask would just be, I think I know why. It was because he had the job on the side and stuff, but why he stayed so loyal? Because Liverpool were awful. They came 11th in the second division. And I imagine, if we came 11th now, it'd be an inquest in the top division. Imagine watching your club go from 1946, 47, win the league, and then within about 10 years' time, you're fighting mid-table in the second division. And he, as I say, he was getting picked for Scotland and Great Britain, and the team was called Liverpool. They literally were a one-man team. I want to know why he was just so determined to love Liverpool so much. Hopefully, I've tried my best to answer that, but it'd be nice to hear him say, just the main reason really why he wanted to stay.
I wonder what. Sorry, go ahead, Matty.
Why do you think he stayed then?
Well, I think there's a few things. I think you can't ignore the fact he fought in a war in the middle of everything. That throws the world upside down, doesn't it? He had a home that was secure. He'd been through the war. He met his missus before it. Obviously, they'd gone through the war and stayed together. Then he had his family issues, and ended up all his family having to move to Liverpool after the death of his father. So I think he had a lot of deep set roots in Liverpool, and obviously he was only part time. He had an accountancy job, which basically meant he had a retirement plan sorted as well. So it was a trivial matter, which obviously you don't have to worry about today because he was only on £20 a week. But he had to sort out what was going to happen after he retired. So I think that's the reason. But I hope it'd also be because he loved Liverpool FC and he loved the fans and he loved the cop and playing there every week. That's what I'd hope it'd be. But I think it's a balance of everything, really.
I've always thought, what would these former players, especially like Billy, think of the footy that's played now?
Oh yeah, and I was like, well, the speed of it is just a different thing. They were playing in bogs, and the ball weighed, it was like heading a cannonball, and then you couldn't kick it around anywhere. So it's just the speed is the maddest bit. But as I say, he only played 2 days a week, and for him to be that fit, I just think. If he played today, he'd be the James Milner. He'd be everywhere. He'd be Mr. Versatile, 100%. He'd play every week. So, it must be mad. And I think if you think about them as well, fighting a war and coming back and playing football, and then you see people like Harry Kane not turning up for training and all this type of stuff, you just think it just would never happen, would it? So it's just mad how far football's come, isn't it? But, yeah.
Just imagine how he feels about the transfer fees floating about nowadays.
I know, yeah. But he missed out on that, I think.
Yeah. How much do you reckon he'll be in today's market?
Well, he was the best player for Liverpool. So I think, Liverpool were not too far off, to what Aston Villa might be today. They weren't the best team in the country, but he was the main man in that team. So if you see Grealish going for that amount of money, he was a bit further down the league, but obviously the leagues were a lot closer than bad. So, he'd probably be easy 50 to 100 if it was from that Liverpool team. I think that's what he'd be easy today.
Awesome. Our CEO/director Matt Thielen of LFC Transfer Room. If you don't follow him, obviously give him a follow. He said Neil Jones says LFC have looked at 𝙊𝙘𝙃𝙪𝙚, Pedro Neto, and a trio of 𝙊𝙘𝙃, 𝙃𝙪𝙗, and 𝙊𝙘𝙃. And obviously this is just it's all coming through now. So anyone in there that takes your fancy? For me, if you're going to ask me any of those, we've studied 𝙃𝙃𝙃 on the podcast. It used to be like the 𝙃𝙃𝙃 show, this podcast, because we were linked to it with him in January. And he does look like a player. Again, he looks more like a midfielder, if I'm honest. And I think we really need an attacker. Harvey Barnes, again, is one of those players that excites me. He's young. He's quite enigmatic, and he's got a belter on him as well. I suppose if they're the options going forwards for me, the only goal scorer that I can see there as such is Pedro Neto, who is going to thrive. He reminds me of a lot of Diogo Jota. I think 𝙊𝙃𝙃 obviously is that holding midfielder, that Genie replacement, perhaps that box-to-box man who he could be as well. And we've obviously discussed Bowen. But Neil Jones, very reliable for everyone who is listening as well. Neil Jones from goal has been breaking all of the Liverpool news along with David Lynch and obviously Joyce as well. So if it's coming from Neil Jones, that they look like the options. Again, they could be smokescreen. We know that Liverpool don't tend to use the media as much as what other clubs do. So it could be smokescreen, perhaps, to say, actually, we're interested in these people while they're going for someone else. But out of those, do any of those take your interest at all, Pete?
Yeah, but Pedro Neto would have been my main one, I thought. I think that the Bond is all right, but I think I feel like he could be someone who's already reached his potential. He just looks like he could still give more. I don't think he's going to get much better. But that Pedro Neto was good. I think main thing with him, remember he scored the goal that was disallowed at Anfield, and he was doing that in front of the cop, and it got disallowed. That was boss. I love that. So I hated him in that moment. But I think other than that, he scored some boss goals for Wolves last year. So yeah, I think if we're getting him, if we want him, I'd definitely have him. But it depends how much, but Jota did well, so yeah, I'd have him.
Yeah, and I think we do tend to have quite a good relationship with Wolves, obviously with Kiana Herver going the other way. I really do hope that he has a breakout season, because I really surprised me that transfer when he left us, actually. But Wolves have got players who they are going to sell, because it does look like they need to sell some players. But Pedro Neto, I think he's 23 years old. He does look like a player who Klopp would absolutely thrive in working with. Matty, anyone there?
I would probably say Pedro Neto is the only one, but then I do think that he's too similar to Jota, and I believe that if we wanted Pedro Neto, we probably would have got him ahead of Jota when we went and got Jota from Wolves. And for me, the money you're talking, if it's Pedro Neto, it's going to be £40-odd million. I just don't understand why we aren't going in for someone like 𝙃𝙃𝙃 Martinez for 60 mil.
Yeah. I mean, sorry, the rumours that were out obviously today with 𝙊𝙃𝙃 Martinez was that Tottenham had a bid accepted, and that was from the Times, who normally are quite reliable, but actually, when you looked at the Italian media, it was like, no, Inter are done selling. Like they need 𝙊𝙃𝙃 Martinez to carry on. And it looks like he's not now going anywhere, and they've just signed Edin Dzeko to play with him. So yeah, we'll see what Martinez is. Sorry, Daz, I cut you off.
Oh no, you're all right. Neto, definitely. But I do like Barnes. There's potential there, but again, he's English, so the tax on him would be way up. And Leicester aren't going to let one of their better players go. Not for less than like 60 or 70 mil. So that's out the window. And as Matty said, Neto is very Jota-esque. So why have two players that are kind of the same? It wouldn't make sense to me.
I mean, the only sense I could see in that is if they're going to play Jota like they have been doing up top. We've seen that before, as in he's going to rival Firmino, and I again wouldn't really have a problem with that if Neto's going to go out wide and rotate with Salah, with Mane, maybe 𝙊𝙃𝙃 as well.
But he played played through the middle today, Jota.
Yeah. He has done before, well. and he's scoring at the moment. So I wouldn't really have a problem with that if we sign a wide man to play Jota in that false 9/deep, deep attacking role. I wouldn't mind.
Yeah. Back to stuff you've done then, Peter. What would you say you prefer? Because I've just been looking then. You've wrote for the likes of Liverpool, Fulham, Watford, and a host of other clubs. Do you prefer articles, or have you preferred actually getting stuff in and writing a book from scratch?
Yeah, well, I think the book seems to be more respected or better appreciated. I think I don't mind all of them really. I think the main thing I like is writing about a player rather than a game or a tournament or something. I like the basically looking at someone's life from start to finish and just trying to evaluate. So I think from the book, I feel like it's given me a lot more opportunities, and I say this is something I really want to do full time, working just in and around football. So I think I probably would try and carry on doing books and maybe try and find something else to write on. But I think as long as it's just more evaluating a player or a man in football and just the influence they have, because I think there's so many forgotten people in football. I think a lot of time people just speak about what's going on right now, which is obviously that's what gets you through the day. But I think there's a lot of time in football spaces to respect and listen to the stories of what's come before us. And I think there's a lot of people at Liverpool. There's 7 benches outside Liverpool. There's Shankly, Paisley, Kenny, John Barnes, Steven Gerrard, Elijah Scott, and Billy Liddell. I know I've done Billy Liddell, and I'd like to just keep trying to go through them and make sure that the rest of the people, they're remembered and respected. I think with Billy, similar to Elijah Scott, people know the name, but maybe don't know much else. So maybe something with him in the future, or just trying to make sure everyone's story gets told.
So when you've been writing your book, though, has there been anyone who, because obviously you found so much out about Billy Liddell that fans probably don't know, is there anyone who when you've been writing it, you thought, I'd really like to write about this player to find out more about the life for your interests as well, but to actually put it into words? Is there a particular player you'd love to do a book about?
Yeah, well, I think Phil Taylor would be a really good one. He's obviously the captain, 1950 FA Cup final. He was with Liverpool for a long time, and then obviously he was the manager before Bill Shankly. So I think with him, I like the fact that people seem to think Liverpool started with Shankly, and there was a man before him, and there was a whole chapter of Liverpool that came before Bill Shankly, and it was Phil Taylor. And as I say, it was the worst period in Liverpool's history, but it's also an interesting one, and I think it'd be good to see how he went from captain to manager. And he had to drop Billy, and he was a teammate of his. That dynamic of changing from being the captain and he's your best player in your team, and then being the one taking the front when all the fans are kicking off because you've dropped them. I think it'd be an interesting dynamic to look at, I think, with him as well.
Do you find it a lot more interesting than looking at the older side of Liverpool? I know I've seen that you studied 60s football history, didn't you, in university? Is that something that you're massively passionate about then, the older versions of Liverpool?
Yeah, well, I just think I like telling the stories that people don't know. So I think, for 2 reasons. One, that I think less people can pick up on the mistakes you make if you do more current days. And then I think, if you look in the past, I think it's just more, there's a lot of people that aren't remembered. I think, I could start writing about Kenny and Shankly and that, but I think a lot of people know the stories. I think it's more interesting to read something you haven't heard before rather than the same story in a different way. So that's what I just, whether it's old or whether it's writing about Jan Kronkamp or something, no one's heard of him. But just, maybe something like that, just the interesting ones that maybe forgotten, I think is more interesting to me.
I think for me as well, I've never seen Billy Liddell play, don't know much about him. So your book's going to offer so much to the younger fan. Like, I'm the same age as you, but people like our age and like older and stuff who've never lived through that era, it's going to, it's never going to, they're never going to know about Billy Liddell. So reading this book should open their eyes to so many fans, isn't it?
Yeah, well, hopefully. As I said, my dad, his dad died when my dad was 3 months old, so he never obviously didn't know his dad at all. But his hero was Billy Liddell. But obviously, I think for people of my dad's age, even he was born in 57, so he never saw Billy play. So even him, it's word of mouth, and obviously it's going to wear off over time. So people born in the 60s and 70s, even to them, Billy's, you don't really know much about him. So as you say, people our age, I think if I went to a Liverpool fan and said, do you know Billy Liddell? I think probably 70% would say yeah. And then I'd say more than half of them would go, I don't really know much else other than he played for Liverpool and Liverpool. that's about it. So I think that's what it is. Hopefully, I want to try and like reignite the memories of the older fans who remember him, and also just introduce him to a new crowd, because obviously he would have been 100 in January, and I think just his story deserves to be remembered, and hopefully, this will help and let his legacy live on a little bit longer.
Well, we've talked before, Pete. It's a massive global fan base now, which a lot of fans only started supporting Liverpool probably from 2005 after the Champions League. So they don't know any of the history before that. And I love books like yours, and Jeff Goulden as well, my mate, that want to tell these stories because they need to be told, As I told you last time, my granddad used to tell me all the stories about Billy, and I used to go, "Yeah, well, waffle on, granddad." but I wish I would have really listened to him, because he did see Billy. He was there in the Shankly days and everything, Tommy Smith and all that good stuff. And I just wish I'd listened to him a bit more. I wish I would have written it down.
Yeah. That's it. Well, everyone who's old enough, you just write down your memories, don't you? That's what it is. I've even thought that just done like from the right in front in the future, because obviously I've been lucky enough to go to Kiev, Madrid, Basel, and watch the Barca game and 4-0 and stuff. But I'm on already forgotten stuff that happened that day. So I even think now, in the future, any big games or any big away days, just maybe you go back and write something down, because you never know in the future when you look back and your son or your grandson or your granddaughter or whatever ask you about what that game was like. You should always just try and keep all that memories, because say once these people died and these games go forever, and they lose relevance. So I think it's just trying to put a spotlight on that, as you say, and just try and make sure that the story lives on of Billy Liddell, really.
You've mentioned some really iconic games and moments, really, from obviously our lifetime. Daz is far older than us, so he can probably name a few more. For you, like, it's so difficult. I mean, we even discussed last week, about 𝙊𝙤 𝙃𝙪𝙘 to go into Lazio, and I said, one of the biggest moments for me as a Liverpool fan was that Barcelona game, that 4-0 game, where Shaqiri obviously had such a instrumental, moment or two, really, that with those crosses to Gini. And for me, like, it's really difficult to try to define, I suppose, as a historian, what the most defining moment as a Liverpool fan is, because you can go every Saturday, every Sunday, and you can hear You'll Never Walk Alone, and it will still remain as that first major life experience, because there isn't a stadium like it. Is there a moment where you look at as a historian and think that is Liverpool Football Club right there? Because for me, you could pick one or two moments, but probably in reality, it's every Saturday, every Sunday.
Yeah, well, as you say, I think there's probably, every time you ask any Liverpool fan or any football fan, what's the best game you've been to, they'll always say, my first game. And I'll tell you what the story was, and it doesn't matter if you win or whatever, because I was lucky enough to be mascot, and it was in third round replay, and we lost to Palace in 2003. But to me, I'll never forget that. It was an unbelievable game. I remember, Sammy Ipia passing me the ball, and I hit it in the cop end, and Didier Man having a cheese butty on my shoulder as a picture taken. That game will never be forgotten for me. But I think 90% of the crowd who were there won't remember. So as you said, I think it's all personal memories and personal stories. I think if we look at Billy's time, I think, when they were in the second division, beating Everton in the FA Cup twice, they'll be the games that the fans remember, because obviously it was the big derbies and they haven't played each other in a few years. And then I think Liverpool as a club, it'd be Shankly taking over and 77 European Cup final. I think they're probably the two of the most defining games you could have as a football club, because obviously that's where the two times where it all started. But I think so. It's all up to each person, and every game's important to you. If you go to one or you go to a million, isn't it? It depends on what game you went to.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think for me, I'll never, ever forget the moment where obviously the title was decided and we weren't even playing. I think that's one of most ironic and coincidental games that I've ever seen is obviously, that Chelsea Man City game. And I was in my front room and I was in bits. Like, I was crying my eyes out, and my wife was like, "Are you okay? Like, seriously, are you all right?" And for me, like, we weren't even playing that game, but as that's what sport is. So yeah, I mean, that for me would probably rank up there along with the Barcelona and Istanbul game. But Matty, anything for you?
The best moment for me was 𝙊𝙘𝙀 𝙃𝙪𝙣𝙃𝙪 against 𝙊𝙣𝙀𝙃𝙀𝙃. 100%. I was in the cop for that game, and I'll never ever forget it. Like, I've seen the ghost goal, seeing that live, the Barca game. But for me, that was so important, because on the run-in for that Champions League, if Gerrard ultimately didn't score that goal, we were going to be in the Europa League. And the importance of that goal, just how it rocketed into the net, it was. It'll never ever be topped, I don't think, for me, ever.
And like you say, that, I mean, after 2005, there was that whole Gerrard, will he go, won't he go? And after we won the Champions League, obviously that year, because of that goal as well, we had to obviously win by a 2-goal deficit. And he said, "How could I go anywhere else?" And 𝙊𝙀𝙃 𝙃𝙪 stayed with us. And had it not been for that moment, you're absolutely bang on. Who knows where A, 𝙊𝙀𝙃 𝙃𝙪 would have been, and B, where Liverpool would have been.
Yeah.
Daz?
When I first saw Billy Liddell play, for me, probably 89, the Hillsborough, and then 90, when before the last time we won the league, was very emotional, because I've had mates, family members that passed away in that, and it was just a very emotional time around Liverpool. And then, of course, 30 years later, we get 96 points. And it was just, I broke down. My missus was kind of the same, but she understood, why I was crying. My kids didn't, but that really touched me. I mean, waiting 30 years. Again, we're Liverpool Football Club. It shouldn't take 30 years to win the league again, So, it was a culmination of everything just coming to a boil and just letting it out, screaming like we've done it. And then COVID.
I know. I mean,
it was a damper.
I don't know. Hopefully it's motivation that the lads can go out and do it again, because I don't see any reason, if we can assign an attacker, I don't see any reason why we can't do it again. I know that Man City has spent silly money. Lukaku's obviously coming into Chelsea for silly money, but nothing wrong with our squad. And this is what we say on our WhatsApp groups, all the time, is that we're only 2 signings away from them again. We're not a million miles away, and if we get a signing or 2, we will still push them, and we won't have to wait 30 years. I just really hope that is the case, because otherwise Pete's going to have to write another book on a 30-year drought, 2 30-year droughts maybe.
Yeah.
I've just been looking at the managers who Billy Liddell played under there. Do you think that if he would have had a bigger spell under Shankly, because he only played under Shankly for 2 years, do you think?
Yeah.
Do you think more people? I know Billy Liddell was remembered massively by loads of fans, but do you think people our age, you'd be spoke about in more regard if he had played under Shankly for longer?
Yeah, I think so, definitely. I think, as I say, Liverpool began with Shankly apparently, and everything that happened before never happened. So I think he's unfortunate with that. When you see who he played under, I think his story's a bit, given a bit discredit really for what he's done. I think the people he played under, football was really different then. In 46, 47, when they won the league, and it was the second to last game, the manager didn't even turn up because he was on a scouting mission, and the board was picking the team every week. So it was totally different. Bob Paisley was dropped from the 1950 FA Cup final because the board of directors chose someone else to play. It was a totally different time. I think if you had a Bill Shankly who literally had control of the club and did the training, did the tactics, picked the team, picked the transfers, it's obviously going to make the team better. I think if he had, literally if Shankly had come in, Shankly was a manager, if Shankly had come 2-3 years earlier, I think he'd have got Liverpool promoted quicker, and Billy would have been a much bigger part of the team. So I think that would definitely have helped. Ian St. John's got that legacy because of what he did in the '65 FA Cup final, and he was part of that team with Ron Yates to get the team up. I think Billy was unfortunate. He doesn't have the same regard maybe in terms of being part of Shankly's story. So yeah, I think you are right. If he turned up earlier or just had a better manager than Phil Taylor and John Welsh, then I think he would have done better off. Yeah.
He's probably one of the only footballers, though, when you look at his like statistics who he's played for, that has like the Royal Air Force 11 in clubs that he's played for through the war. So for him to actually have scored as many goals as he did, considering there was a world war sandwiched in the middle of his career, is remarkable, really, isn't it?
Oh yeah, definitely. So, I think if you add in the wartime, I think I've said this before. If you add in the wartime goals and games for Liverpool, and that's disregarding the fact that he fought a war in the middle of that. He played for Chelsea, he played for Dunfermline, Hearts, played in Canada. If you just add in the Liverpool goals and appearances from the war and add them on to what he did, he'd be second top goal scorer and fourth top appearances in Liverpool's history. And as I say, that's taken a good chunk of games off him anyway from the battling in the war in the middle of it. So I think he's probably the most unfortunate player in Liverpool's history in terms of where he'd be in the leaderboards for goals and appearances. But he left the club as top appearances, top goal scorer. He's still the oldest goal scorer for the club. It still stands today, and he was the oldest ever outfield player when he retired. So you've got to respect the fact that he gives so much to the club, but the war took so much off him, but it took it off everyone, really. Because I worked out a stat in the book. There's a player called 𝙊𝙘 𝙃𝙪𝙣𝙚𝙃, I think, who's from Reading. He played for Liverpool, I think it was 97 times in the war, which is 4 games less than 𝙊𝙣𝙃 played for Liverpool. But none of the games count, so he's not in Liverpool's history. He never played for Liverpool. So I think, you're taking someone like 𝙊𝙣𝙃, all his goals, games, and just disregarding them all from someone's career. I think, obviously Suarez is a massive example, and he wouldn't have scored, whatever. But if you look at that as an example, that's a good 2.5-3 years of solid games and goals that are just taken off everyone. So I think he deserves more respect, definitely.
Well, it's mad to think, one day you're in the trenches, firing at someone, and the next day, you're putting a ball in the back of the net.
Well, exactly. Yeah, well, is that I spoke to Keith Birkinshaw. He went on to manage Tottenham and stuff. And if you look at, he was good to research after. I didn't really know what he'd done in football until I found out. But he only played 1 game for Liverpool, but he was literally every week he was in the army and then coming back and playing for Liverpool on the weekend. So it's mad, isn't it? You can't really comprehend how that could be your life. You play in front of 40,000 people at Anfield, and then Monday to Friday, you're in the trenches shooting at someone. So it's mad, isn't it?
To score that amount of goals, like when you go through his wartime, he was playing on one season. He scored 22 goals in first 6 appearances, whilst, like you've just said, battling in the trenches now on the weekend, playing football, like no training or nothing. It's remarkable, really, just how good he was for Liverpool. And like you said, because he's basically before the Shankly era, it's sort of underappreciated, really, isn't he? So.
Yeah, definitely. I think if you look at the goal involvement, you're saying how good Mo Salah is, and 100% agree. I'm not taking anything off him, but I think for Billy, he was outside left, which I've got in one of the start of the chapters to try and explain what the old style football formations were, because I think I didn't really understand until I mapped it out. So basically, it was like a front 3 and then 2 even wider wingers, and he was one of them. So he was really, really wide. And he was scoring 20-odd goals a season, and his assists weren't recorded. So if you think about how often Salah and Mane get in the middle, imagine them even wider and still scoring that amount of goals, and then adding on his assists. He was a joke, really. Right foot, left foot, fast, quick, strong, win headers. I think he literally could do everything. So I think even that's more underappreciated as well.
Just before we wind down then, because obviously we're coming up to the hour, we've got a couple of quick fire questions for you, Pete, and they've come from Twitter, and they've obviously come from the comments and from us as well. Literally, don't even think about it, just a straight answer would be great. So you can sign one player for Liverpool this window. Who is it?
Mbappe,
100%. If you could sell one player, who would it be?
Adrian.
He just signed a new deal.
I'd take
Um,
Barry.
Get more money.
I was gonna say Origi, but there we go. From no pasta, no party, spaghetti or linguine?
Spaghetti.
Spaghetti, yeah, that's a good answer.
Got on the
I'd
front
probably
there
go
as well, off them pasta or risotto.
pasta or risotto as well.
I'm not a rice fan, so pasta.
All day, mate, all day. I suppose as well, like this was one of the best things on Twitter. This came from Tom 𝙊𝙃𝙃𝙃, so thank you for that. Hello, mate. Can you ask Pete what his perfect Sunday is, start to finish?
Okay, so Liverpool won yesterday. Get up, Matty's breakfast, Super Sunday. I'll have like City get beat by Arsenal. We'll say that, and then it'll be a bank holiday Monday the next day. I'll go to the pub and go out for tea with my missus. We'll have a chabba, and then we'll go to the pub with all the lads and all the girls. They are sorted.
That sounds like a sick Sunday, mate. That
Yeah,
sounds amazing. Matty, Daz, any last questions for Pete?
Yeah, when's your book out again? Where can people buy it from and stuff, so everyone knows how to get that?
Yeah, so it's out on the 8th of November. You can pre-order now. It's on my website. It's the best place to get it. It's the cheapest place, and I get the most money from it. So it's a good combo for everyone. But yeah, just go on my Twitter, Peter Kenny Jones. It's my Instagram as well. Just go on the link on that. That's the best way. It's on Amazon and everything else as well. But yeah, if you pre-order it now, I can post it out. I can sign it and stuff. It's all on my website there.
Anything from you, Daz, before we go?
No, I just want to thank Pete. Twice I've got to chat with you, so in a short space of time, and I just really appreciate you coming on my show and on our show.
Daz, where can we hear Pete on your show as well?
You can go to YouTube, the Liverpool Connection podcast, or you can get us on Twitter at ATX Reds Podcast. So it just came out, yesterday, didn't it?
Yesterday,
yeah. So that was Pete's first full length interview. So I'm very very honoured that I got him. So yeah.
Wow, you've taken his virginity and done it again.
Yeah, I owe him a few pints.
No, I owe you. Thanks very much for having me. I've enjoyed it. Thanks very much, everyone. Twice stars, and thanks, Matty, Richie. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. Honestly, yeah, it's been fantastic. We was we could talk all day about Liverpool Football Club. We say every podcast to talk to someone like as in depth as you is a historian as you are as well. We could probably talk for the next few years. So thank you very much.
Oh, thanks very much. Loved it. Thank you.
As always, this is it for an episode of The Room, brought to you by LFC Transfer Room. Please catch us every single Tuesday. We will be on Spotify, Apple, Google, Android, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and TuneIn Radio. We are worldwide. But from now, it is very, very close to the start of the season, and hopefully, we'll be here next Tuesday talking about a very good win over Norwich. But time will tell. Until then, though, from myself, Matty, Daz, and Pete, as always, up the Reds.
Up the Reds.
Up the Reds.
Get in.